of masters in oil and gas and they haven't gotten where to fix them. Yeah. Where I think they have to channel, my opinion, is the technical institutions, let's say polytechnics and stuff like that. That is also, and they can concentrate on that area, but they can also look at polytechnics. That is where they can get the actual people who will work in the oil and gas industry. Because if you have masters in oil and gas, who are you coming to represent? I mean, who are you coming to take over from? It is very difficult. So they can look at this area, especially the polytechnics, to groom, to get those people out, because they are those that can work in the fields. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. I think we had one last question from my colleague in Tanzania, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, I have a mix of questions and also a comment.
Please keep it to the questions.
It's not going to be long. It's just a quick one. A couple of things that I've learned out of these discussions. First of all, is the space where the local content exists, or laws and legislation lives. But also, there's an issue of ease of doing businesses that you have pointed out. But also, there's an issue of disparity, knowledge, and skills that were pointed out. And also, one thing that I wanted to talk about is deliberate actions to empower the people. But out of this, I was so much interested on the issue of local. And we have pointed it out, and we know that oil and gas industry have some operational industry standards, for example. There are those ones which are very stringent standards that you can talk about. For example, environmental, healthy, social, security and safety. Some are very stringent, and some of the fiscal probably can be discussed. But we have also, on the other side of the local content, we have needs, desire, and sort of demands. And we have a responsibility to match what is the local content, desire, needs, and demands, vis-a-vis what are the industrial standards. So my question is, and I do not know how CSO operates, especially NGOs. Partly I know that you are advocating development, but which parts of the local content or demands, when you are making demands to the government or making demands from the international oil companies, which things do you consider? For example, if people don't have skills in the society, they are very poor, this is a problem, what would you demand from the government and the international oil companies to give to these communities where the projects are happening? Those are the kind of things that I would like to know. And what should be the deliberate action for you guys to advocate and get the results that everyone is desiring? Yeah, thanks.
All right, thank you. I want to give my panelists 2 minutes each to sort of respond to some of the questions and also give their final comments. I think we'll start again with Kaiser and then Aikal and then finally go.
Okay, thanks very much for the questions. There was a question in the beginning about how to win the trust of international companies. I think there are some examples from especially the mining industry where actually civil society organizations have kind of played a role of a sort of mediator between international companies and the local business community. And I think that model, for example, sharing information about the opportunities to procure and so on, I think the similar model could potentially work in terms of employment or using these kinds of facilities, as my colleague mentioned in his question. So I think there's a whole question of how can civil society organizations actually work directly with the companies as well to make them understand the context of operation in a way that can facilitate employment and procurement. I think there were several questions around sort of what can civil society actors do, and I think a lot of it comes down to monitoring and using data that is available and also advocating for that data to be available, and then using their knowledge of also other sectors in the economy to promote issues that are where there are gaps, for example, around what can CSOs do in linking local content to industrialization, it's not an area where you would first think of civil society organizations playing a huge role, but actually if, for example, through analysis there are identified gaps in education, such as were mentioned, maybe we should put a greater emphasis on technical education, the civil society is in a good place to then take those claims and actually advocate for those things also in the educational policy sphere. Finally, also on the definitional issues, that's really key. That's key for actually having the vision and enabling local content to deliver on the targets or the objectives that have been set. But it's also key for avoiding these kind of incentives that lead to misconduct and misuse for being formed. So I think that's a really key area for civil society to pay attention to. Final point that I think is kind of over-encompassing this all is the space of civil society to operate. So freedom of speech, freedom to express even views that are different. Through some other research we've been doing, we see that there is actually a kind of correlation between civic space and transparency and accountability in the extractive sector. So civil society can take the role of regulators in monitoring everything, but they can promote that space that then fosters open and accountable management of the sector. Thanks.
I think one of the things, I look at civil society more like civic space, right? Citizens engagement, the civic movement. And so civic movement for me brings in even the private sector and the business communities coming together as cooperatives, as mentioned yesterday, or other things. I think those, if we look at it from that space, they have an opportunity to push for. I think in places like South Sudan, even with the ease of doing business being a problem, it is very hard for an international business to come in and not partner with a local company. And I think if we start to push for that, and in a meaningful way, that's going to be important. In terms of the persons with disabilities, one of the things we are struggling with is that we have been able to get a lot of persons with disabilities in the sector, but then it's always it's not meaningful employment. And I think we have to, really start to push for that meaningful engagement with the sector, not tokenism. Because what I feel happens in the current space is tokenism to persons with disabilities, and it is not meaningful. So that is the gap that we as civil society, at least within my context, we are struggling with. Talking to Salom around skills transfer, even with with low skills, I think if you look at yourself as a person, since you joined work until now, there's some investment in you through training and that. I think it is just right for companies to put that in, that you actually don't calculate the number of people employed, but you're actually looking at the movement from unskilled to semi-skilled and the rest. Because we cannot keep massaging this argument of you do not have the skill set. Because all of us joined as clerks, and some go up until their managerial level. And that is because there is an investment and there is a policy in those companies to put that investment in place. The question around trust, I think one thing, my experience, Ghanaians are just soft and nice. In my country, we stopped tallow operations for 2 months. Why? Local content, i.e., you're not going to move a truck because we don't see the benefit to our people. For us, where diplomacy fails, we take other actions. And so, and we have to start to embrace it, because these guys, as Godber says, these guys know cost. They know when they are suffering. So when you say a rig is stopping and losing $500,000 a day, make it happen. That's what we do. And that is the reason why even the subcontracted companies have to find a way to come down. So in terms of that one we were saying about Kumasi, you actually say, these are the people who are here. You're not going to bring in somebody. Trucks are stopped on the road and they said, why are you bringing a driver when we have drivers? Why are you bringing an automobile when we have? And that is how we do it. And that's why Tallow has a problem working in Turkana. And you know what? My people are proud of it. So we get what we want.
Thanks, Ikal. I think Ikal is showing that corporations have feelings. Their feelings are called costs. Godba.
No, I think I will just actually wrap it up there and basically say, first of all, just for all of us to understand that we've used the term civil society here, which is a fairly broad concept, as we know, that we are talking about different segments of society, NGOs just being one of them. And probably most of us who are here were NGOs. But you can think of the religious organizations, you think of trade unions, you think of professional associations, business associations, all these are civil society. So in terms of skills, actually there is resident skills that a mobilized society can deploy to be able to enhance local content. I think the second point that I would want to highlight is the whole issue of displacement versus empowerment. Because the traditional way, especially NGOs work, is that they displace. You displace government, you even displace society that you are trying to help. That can be contrasted with when you go to empower the local communities, the local governments. And I think Ikara and I normally talk about the case of Turkana. In Turkana, you also have a local government. Besides Friends of Lake Turkana, you have a local government. Now, in many countries, including Uganda, where I come from, you can describe what we call local governments as poorly funded NGOs. And you know what those look like? If you have an NGO that doesn't have money, normally you run around. If someone throws money here, you are doing someone's work. You are really not doing your work. That is how local governments in most countries operate. And therefore, they have no capacity to be able to advocate for their population. So you get NGOs displacing people. So in other words, we must be looking at how do you create the local organizational infrastructure within society, within the local government, to actually be able to be the ones who are saying we want to see local content. And I think then I would end there by saying that part of our problem is that we are dealing with a demand-supply question. That for many countries, local content is being supplied. So we are giving you local content. In fact, and this is for both companies and governments, we are giving you local content. In fact, if you don't clap for them, they even get angry. In other words, you're not appreciating. And unless we change that equation where the population, the citizens are the ones who are saying, we need to supply the food, we need to supply the services, we need to do this, I don't think that we can be able to change much. And I think that that's one area where civil society organizations can play a very constructive role by trying to organize and empowering communities and local governments to behave a little bit stubborn so that they become, you change the power relations, because really in this sector, you have a problem of power relations which is always tilted in favor of government and the companies. And there, how do we, tamper with that power relations and make sure that the governments, that is central government, the companies feel like they are dealing with an actor out there who understands what their interests and their rights are. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Godba. Again, for recentering the conversation around governance. This is the Africa Oil Governance Summit, and so we cannot run away from governance being the center of it. Ladies and gentlemen, we've run out of time. I want us to please put our hands together for a great panel today.
Put your hands together for them. Thank you very much. Very controversial panel, but it was necessary. Charles always does his thing. Finally, we've come to, I guess, the penultimate session. And this session will usher us into our communique and the closing, and we save the best for last. Opportunities for women, empowerment in the petroleum industry, taking advantage of local content potentials. And this is where I want to invite our technical team behind to help us with, because we're going to be using our listening devices. Part of the conversation will be in French, and so if you're like me, and the only thing I understand in French is je t'aime, and if you push me, I'll add je t'aime beaucoup. That's all I know in French. And I've been told reliably that if I find myself in any of the French-speaking countries, particularly in France, and that's all I understand, I will survive. If you are like me, and that's all you understand, there will be no je t'aime beaucoup in this presentation. So I want to invite the technical team. Please come and help us with how we can use our listening devices. Every table has one. Can I get a technical team to come up here and help us? Just give us a brief tutorial on how to use it so everybody can participate.
Good afternoon. I'm the technician around here. Actually, we have two devices. We have this one, the digital one, and we have the black one like this. And this one is operated. We have a headset, and here the headset button. All right. We're gonna insert the headset here. We have the power switch. Oh, sorry. I said we've got two devices. And one is black. You have this one also. So this, you have the headset button. All right. You're gonna plug the headset here, and here the power button. So the English is 1. The channel rotated. The English is turned to 1. All right. And here the volume button down there. All right, that's the regulators. And this, you insert the headset here. And you just press on one of these buttons to put it on. And the channel is 00. That's for English. Thank you. So, any question?
Everybody okay? Sorry?
Sorry?
It's only 1-0. So when you press it, what number do you see on it?
Okay. Okay, I'm also here to assist, so I'll be there. Thank you. Yeah.
So if you need assistance, he's coming around. If you need a table, need assistance, just show by hand. They'll come around. Okay, so there's a table. He's gonna come back and assist. I'm guessing that everybody else is okay. If you have a challenge, just show by hands. The technical team will get to your table and they will assist you. While we do that, let's go straight into the conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome the facilitator for this discussion, Mrs. Anna Kulaya, who is the Deputy Country Director, WildAV Tanzania. Hello, Anna. Yes, madam. Round of applause for Anna as she makes her way to facilitate this particular session. She is going to be joined by speakers from Oxfam, West Africa, Mekombe Teresa. A round of applause for Mekombe. He is from Oxfam, West Africa. Thank you very much, Mekombe. Also joining us is Dr. Jemima Nunu. She is lecturer GIMPA, board member of the Petroleum Commission, Ghana. Hi. Dr. Jemima Nunu is just making a round of applause for her. And finally, Miss Victoria Ebizem Ahari, who will also join us. is Executive Director, Spaces for Change, Nigeria. Ms. Victoria, thank you very much. So this is an all-ladies affair, and we really save the best for last. So we have a 1 hour to do this, and so we're starting at 12:36 and we'll end at 1:36 thereabout. Thank you very much, Anna. Anna, please take it over. You have microphones all in your midst, so you can use it.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to chair this session. I have beautiful ladies in front of me. As you can see, our discussion is only for women. We are beautiful women in front of you, and I'm so happy also because this is my first time to come to Ghana, but also the first time to an opportunity for me to listen to issues around oil and gases. And what I have been hearing for the 2 days here is the issue of inequality, the issue of discrimination, the issue of power, participation, which I can say all of them also women do face. So for the first time, I came to realize when you're talking about issues of natural resources, petrol, oil and gas, we share the same frustrations like what women do face in terms of leadership, governance, and how we can access natural resources. So I would like to introduce my panelist, Ms. Jemima Anujo, who is a doctor. She's a lecturer at Ghana Institute of Management. She is also an expert in biochemistry. She's a very good researcher, so I know we are going to hear a lot from her. I would also like to introduce Victoria. Victoria is a founder director of researcher as well, and police at Space for Change, a non-profit organization in Nigeria. She has done a lot of research, policy analysis, community engagements, and national level advocacy. And lastly, I would like to introduce Ms. Mekombe Therese, who is a lawyer, but also an advocate for civil society organizations, in particular for women's rights and children. Welcome, the panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me for a round of applause for my panelists. Okay, I think I should go straight to the questions. Our topic is opportunities for women empowerment in the petroleum industry, taking advantage of local content. So I would like to start with Dr. Nuno. How local content is local for women? And if you talk about the opportunities that are available for women, do we really think, does it matter for women taking the advantage of local? Thank you.
Hello and good afternoon, everybody. On your last point when you asked whether or not you think it's important for women to take up these opportunities, especially the local opportunities available in the oil and gas sector, I would say a resounding yes, most definitely, for many, many reasons. First of all, it actually makes business sense to have a diverse, engaged workforce. And you cannot have a diverse and engaged workforce when you're excluding, at least in the case of Ghana, or marginalizing 50% of your population. It doesn't make sense. And I believe in the oil and gas area, women have a lot to offer. It's a shame that globally, the oil and gas sector, women are very underrepresented, especially in the technical areas, especially in the technical fields. And they face a lot of barriers and discrimination. For example, you hear of stories where women that go on to gas stations and the rest, and they don't even have places of convenience or restrooms. for women at all. And it's not good, it doesn't make sense. So yes, I think it's very important that women take full advantage, and whatever barriers there are that are prevalent, that are not really encouraging women to get into this sector, they need to be addressed, and addressed very much head on. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What I take from you is the number matters, and if you talk about the population worldwide, women seems to be more than men, and therefore is a missed opportunity if you don't engage them, and making sure full engagement in the oil and gas. Now, let me ask Ms. Mekombe, what do you think is the role of government in creating more opportunities for women in the oil and gas industry?
Merci et bonjour à tout le monde. Je voudrais remercier ACEP qui m'a invité à participer à cette conférence qui est d'une importance capitale quand on parle des ressources naturelles et surtout du pétrole dans nos pays. Je crois que le rôle que le gouvernement, pour répondre à la question de la modératrice, le rôle que le gouvernement doit jouer, c'est dans la mise en place des législations. Depuis hier, j'écoutais, je ne sais pas, ça dépend de la législation de chaque pays, mais à ma connaissance, tout ce qui concerne les contrats pétroliers, les accords, on intègre toujours tout ce qui est implication de la population et surtout implication des couches qui sont les femmes et les jeunes. Et donc le rôle du gouvernement, c'est de s'assurer que dans tout contrat qu'il signe avec les entreprises, que les femmes soient mises au devant de la scène. Nous avons parlé tout à l'heure de l'importance numérique des femmes en Afrique et surtout dans chacun de nos pays. Je crois que les femmes représentent plus de 50%. On ne peut pas développer un pays avec une telle frange de la population sans pouvoir les impliquer. Moi, je donne toujours cet exemple-là en disant que quand on n'implique pas les femmes dans le développement, c'est l'exemple d'un unijambiste. Quand vous avez une seule jambe, vous pouvez sautiller, mais vous ne pouvez pas aller loin. Alors que vous avez deux jambes, c'est-à-dire si vous impliquez et les femmes et les hommes, vous pouvez marcher, vous pouvez courir et aller plus vite. Et donc je pense que c'est une opportunité pour que les femmes soient impliquées dans ce domaine-là. Maintenant, l'implication doit venir également du fait que les femmes puissent s'intéresser à ce domaine. Nous constatons de plus en plus dans nos pays que les femmes ne s'intéressent pas beaucoup à ce domaine qui est du secteur pétrole. Et ça aussi c'est dû au formatage de l'éducation que nous avons reçu. Et généralement les femmes sont déjà impliquées dans le domaine de l'éducation, de la santé, des affaires sociales, qui pour moi est la suite logique de leur statut de femme. Et donc nous devons faire en sorte que les femmes puissent s'intéresser à ce domaine des industries extractives pour qu'elles puissent être impliquées. Tant que les femmes ne s'intéresseraient pas à ce domaine-là, je pense que ce serait difficile, et pour les femmes et pour les gouvernants également, même s'ils insèrent un pourcentage à donner par rapport à cette frange de la population, ce serait difficile pour les femmes d'y accéder.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mekombe. Thank you. Yeah, from your point of view, what I get from you is we should ensure the participation of women, while at the same time, it seems like women, they don't have interest in issues of oil and gas. So, Victoria, do you think we need having kind of affirmative action? Because as Mekombe said, it seems like women, most of women do not have any interest on issues around gas and oil and petroleum. Thank you.
Thank you, moderator. Basically, the oil industry is still a boys' club all over the world, with just about 20% of the workforce being female, which means 80% of people in the industry, 80% of them are male. So what do we need to do to transform that kind of situation. Some people have suggested affirmative action, some people have suggested quota system, some people have suggested legislation. But all of those measures help to a very large extent, but gaps still remain. Why do I take this position? First of all, when you look at legislation, there are lots of legislations that promote equality across the world. But when it comes to the energy sector, if you look at the way energy laws, policies, and programs are designed, they're designed in a very gender-neutral language and style. So where there is gender inequality and you adopt a gender-neutral approach, it means you're in favor of inequality and entrenches that inequality because legislation does not do anything to respond to that. Then the quota system is important, is very useful. It's been used in Rwanda to achieve significant women participation, at least in political process. More recently, they have 50% of representation in the parliament, which is positive, and we have that experience in Ethiopia as well. But the problem with quota system is sometimes it seems to be saying give women a space just because they are women. It doesn't emphasize the competence of women as managers. Women should get involved in the sector to demonstrate their competence as managers, as engineers, as experts, as drillers, as technical participants in the oil and gas sector. That's some of the concerns I have with quota system. But there are other measures. Do we use targeted subsidies, for instance? Do we use finance? Finance is a big issue. That's one of the major reasons why women are not, very well represented. When we talk about women participation in the energy sector, it's not just about working in an oil company. It cuts across from decision-making level to the supply chain and procurement down to the benefits of petroleum resources. So in the supply chain particularly, where there's capital inside, oil is big money. Whether you're talking about from licensing to the point of exploration, to the point of discovery, to field development, to production, everything is big, 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 big money. Do women have access to finance that require them to play very active roles in the industry? What attitude of lenders, for instance, if a woman walks into a bank and said, I need $1 billion, the managers will look at each other and think she's crazy. So, but when you hear the language of microcredit, give women small money to sell crayfish, groundnut, they think of women because they think that is what women can manage. So there is a two-way problem here. The problem of the lender thinking that women can do it because it involves big money. There is also the problem of the women's interests, women's capacity to take risk. Oil industry business, investment in the oil business is a high-risk business because you can invest $1 billion in a field and you don't get commercial quantities at the end. So that money, something goes up. So women also have to play some major roles. And I don't think it's just enough to say the government. It has to start also from the families. Exposing women to science, technology, engineering, mathematics, all of those courses that will expose them to increase their presence in the oil and gas sector.
Thank you, Victoria. Dr. Jemima, do you agree with Victoria that women do not have interest? And I hear we should consider the value chain. Where do women can fit in the value chain? If you look at the production, if you look at the infrastructure, where do really women can fit in? And also, I just need to know, you tell us, where do you think women can fit in? And this, how can we make women more interesting? And we have to consider that this, when we talk about issues of gas, oil, we are talking about science subjects, which most of women, they don't also have interest. Tell us your views.
Well, I'm not sure whether women don't have an interest in science. It's something that, perhaps we don't encourage. I mean, I can take myself for an example. I'm sitting here, I did only maths, physics, chemistry straight. And I think that, it's not that women are not interested per se. Perhaps it's not something that is exposed to women because of gender stereotypes and perceived gender roles. And it needs to start from the beginning, even in our educational system. I think that physics is not a male subject. Neither is maths, pure maths, further maths. Yeah, we need to degender subjects even from the beginning. So I think once we're successful in doing that and making sure that no matter what subjects, if it's the science-based subjects, if it's the social science, if it's the arts and literature, they're first and foremost degendered. In terms of where women fit in everywhere, we initially started to talk about the workforce and how women are greatly underrepresented in the workforce. But even in the whole supply chain, if you look at companies providing services to the oil and gas sector, how many of those private entities are headed by women? How many of those are female-owned corporate entities that are supplying goods and services to the oil and gas sector? And these measures to try and bring in more women need to be very, very targeted. For example, you have countries where they have particular local content funds. Yeah, we're just in the latter stages of finalizing ours here. And in that way, governments can use very specific measures in targeting or bringing women into the sector. So, for example, a percentage of the companies awarded funds from the local content development funds could go to women-headed companies. That would be fine. That would be good, an enabler to bring women in. In terms of the workforce, as Victoria said, we can try and have at basic a quota system where women that are qualified are able to get certain jobs in certain middle and senior level positions, because what a lot of the time you find is the women are more represented in the more junior or lower level positions, and when it comes to the middle and senior levels, you find hardly any women in the decision-making processes with regards to oil and gas. You'll find that, if anything, there might be one token woman. And that's the kind of thing that needs to change. And that is really within our remit to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Ms. Mekombe, maybe you can add upon what Dr. Jeba was saying about the decision making, because they say if you're not on the table, you'll be on the menu. Now tell us, what do you think position of women when it comes to issues of oil and gas? Thank you.
Merci. Je pense que les femmes doivent être à tous les niveaux. Tout à l'heure, on a parlé de la chaîne de valeur, qu'elles doivent être au début. Mais le début, pour moi, c'est être déjà dans la table de négociation des contrats pétroliers. À ce niveau-là, elles doivent être impliquées dans les prises de décision. Parce que généralement, les contrats sont négociés pas avec les femmes. C'est peut-être quelques hommes, quelquefois, par exemple, si je prends l'exemple des contrats pétroliers de chez moi, on a même pris des hommes qui ne sont même pas du domaine, qui sont allés négocier les contrats pétroliers. Et c'est après, c'est tout seulement que nous nous sommes rendus compte que le Tchad ne gagne pas dans ce contrat-là. Donc moi, je pense qu'on doit impliquer déjà les femmes à ce niveau-là. Et pas seulement les femmes. On parle de quotas, c'est vrai. Mais moi, je suis pour le quota et je ne suis pas pour le quota. Parce qu'en matière de quota, il faut faire très attention. On peut prendre des femmes pour dire que les femmes sont représentées, mais on va prendre les femmes qu'on appelle les femmes alibi. Les femmes alibi, ce sont des femmes qui sont là pour représenter les femmes, mais leurs idées ne sont pas les idées des femmes. Parce que c'est les hommes qui sont derrière, qui ont poussé cette femme-là à être là, et cette femme-là ne peut que défendre les idées des hommes. Donc nous devons également faire très attention quand nous disons qu'il faudrait impliquer, insérer le quota des femmes. Donc je dis, la chaîne de valeur, j'ai parlé de contrat. Au niveau de l'exploration, au niveau de l'exploitation, au niveau de la production, au niveau de la vente, donc à toutes les chaînes de valeur, les femmes doivent être à ce niveau-là pour pouvoir décider de ce qu'il y a lieu de faire. En ce moment, nous, notre pétrole passe par le Cameroun. Et sur le barge, sur une vingtaine d'hommes, c'est une seule femme qui est là. Et cette femme qui est là reçoit même les railleries de ses collègues hommes. Il dit, oui, mais est-ce que tu es là? Est-ce que tu ne penses pas à ton mari? Est-ce que tu ne penses pas à tes enfants? Est-ce que tu te sens bien dans ce milieu-là des hommes? Vous voyez, à ce niveau-là aussi, c'est ça qui fait que les femmes, quelquefois, sont un peu complexées. Et quand quand il est question de s'impliquer dans ce domaine-là, il leur est un peu difficile. Nous avons parlé tout à l'heure de l'éducation que nous avons reçue. C'est également la structure sociale qui fait que nous ne nous intéressons pas à ces domaines de réflexion. Impliquer les femmes dans les prises de décision. La femme dans l'éducation te dit, la femme, tu ne dois pas regarder, quand tu parles avec une personne, bien un homme, tu ne dois pas le regarder dans les yeux. Or, en matière de décision, en matière de négociation, il faut se regarder dans les yeux pour savoir ce que la personne là parle et ce qu'il dit là, et regarder à travers ce qu'il dit, est-ce qu'il est véridique. Et donc, nous ne pouvons pas regarder dans les yeux de cet homme-là pour pouvoir négocier. Quand vous négociez également, il faut baisser la tête ou bien certaines choses, il ne faut pas les dire. Et ça aussi, c'est ça les obstacles également qui font que les femmes ne sont pas prêtes dans les instances de décision. Moi, je vous dirais tout simplement que la décision, bien l'implication des femmes dans les instances de décision doit venir du fait que les femmes elles-mêmes se disent « moi je peux, moi je veux ». Pouvoir c'est vouloir, comme on dirait un adage. Donc si les femmes veulent être impliquées, il faut se faire le chemin, ne pas attendre qu'on vous appelle. Moi, quand il y a une réunion quelque part, j'y vais. Quand j'écoute seulement le thème, je dis « ah mais ça c'est intéressant, il faut que je vienne écouter ». Vous allez voir plein d'hommes. Tout ce que les hommes disent ne sont pas tous sensés. Alors, il faudrait que les femmes soient là, qu'elles-mêmes, elles viennent s'imposer. Il ne faudrait pas attendre qu'on dise « venez les femmes ». On ne vous dira jamais « venez les femmes ». Donc, c'est à nous de nous imposer. Et si nous nous imposons, nous pouvons pouvoir également imposer nos décisions, imposer notre point de vue pour que nous puissions être impliqués dans toute la chaîne de valeur au niveau du pétrole.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mekobe. You have said it all. We should take our spaces and not wait for someone to give us a favor or priority. Victoria, do you have something to add on what Ms. Mekobe has said? Welcome.
Yeah, I love the closing line, which is, don't wait to be invited. Go there. And I recall from personal experience, whenever we're having all of those energy-focused high-level conferences in Nigeria, and I find that most time I'm always the only woman on the panel, or the only or maybe just 2 women in the room, then 90 men there, and you feel so out of place. And that word is very encouraging. Don't wait. Don't feel odd being in the presence of too many men. Go in there and make sure your voice is heard. And I think that is a very strong and powerful message. And but one person that really inspires me a lot, I think my namesake, her name is Vicky Holop. She's the CEO of Occidental Petroleum, who was able, their company has made quite a lot of giant strides, especially in shale oil production in the US. In the course of her career, she took 2 years off because she had a baby and came back, continued to climb and got to the level of CEO of, a Fortune 500 company. I think that's huge. But that also tells you some of the other things that clash with women's career goals: pregnancy, children, family. Women are more concerned about some other natural, I will call them natural and biological obligations that nature has thrust upon them. And when you take a year or 2 years off out of your career, a lot goes off, because you come back, some of your friends or some of your mates have been made managers. A lot happens in the office in 2 years or in a year. A lot happens. So, but how is the oil company structured? Is this structured to respond to that peculiar needs of a woman? Most people sometimes who would have to work offshore for many weeks. So imagine having a child, going with a child to work offshore for many weeks. The way the oil industry is configured responds to the needs of the man, or is so male-focused that it makes women feel out of place when they are in that environment. I know there are quite some of our companies. I used to have my friend that works with Chevron, and there are some days of the week she's allowed to work from home. And I thought that was a very wonderful policy to encourage women engineers to retain their jobs. Then African countries also need to follow suit to restructure some of the things that, some of the technical things that women do in the workplace that allow them to share that responsibility between their family and their career lives. Then the other third part is like the benefits of petroleum resources or petroleum revenues. How are we sharing it across the sexes? Let me give you an example. In Nigeria, we have what we call PTDF, which is a Petroleum Trust Development Fund, What PTDF does is they identify young men and women in the country with interest in STEM. That is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And they source for schools, the best schools that provide capacity building, master's degree, PhD programs, and courses related to oil and gas. So we find those students, they take them to the school, and it's all expense paid by the federal government of Nigeria. In 2014, 60 students won the scholarship. Out of the 60 students, we had 48 men, 12 women. And you could ask, why is that so? Because if you look through the applications, you will find out that it was not only 12 women that applied. So why would you allow 20? Because what it simply translates to is, if 60 go up there, build their capacity, and the industry retains 60 of them, that disparity will continue, because 48 will, assuming all of them rose to the highest level of their career, 48 people will still be up there and 12 people. So the disparity starts from down and goes all the way up. For instance, if that is changed along the way, in the middle or at the beginning, at the point of recruitment, to say we have a 50-50 policy. If gender diversity programs insist on 50-50, all of these inequalities will be balanced out. But it's going to be a hard sell, because many countries may not have the number of girls already in schools that may enable them to satisfy that requirement. The other benefit to look at is, let's say, Ghana is using some of its resources, investing it in senior high school program. Brazil is investing their money in healthcare, providing healthcare as a human right, and the government is providing that. Sometimes as independent organizations, we try to look at the figures. How many people are benefiting from these programs in terms of male to female ratio? You still find very huge disparity. Because most times we are looking at it, government has provided it to citizens. Go down the figures and see who's benefiting. Look at oil subsidies, petroleum subsidies. When Nigeria withdrew strategic subsidies, they tried to use some of the faith savings to develop social protection programs. One of them was Shopee. Shopee tried to be targeted, but outside Shopee, and the reason why it was targeted is because we had then a finance minister. Remember, we had a petroleum minister that was female. We had a finance minister that put her legs down and ensured that the benefits were targeted. Some of the benefits were clustered on women. So it comes back again, because it's not just something that operates in silos. We need women. We need women up there. What kind of women are you having up there? What kind of policies are you having? We need to ensure that you already have people with the right, that's the concern I have with quota system, people with the right competence, so that when I walk into the room, or when a woman walks into the room, you don't say she is just there because there is the diversity quota that the company needed to fill. She is there on the basis of her skills, the value that she adds to the industry and to the sector. And I think that is really cross-cutting across the board.
Thank you, Victoria. Dr. Jemima, to add on what Victoria is saying about issues of gender disparity, but at the same time using incentives which are available, how can oil component of budget be used as a tool to develop capacity of women to take advantage of opportunities in the oil and gas sector? Okay, I would like to know your experience on how you think oil component of budget can be used as a tool to develop capacity of women to take advantage of opportunities of oil and gas sector. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I explained a little bit before that you can use certain components of the budget, i.e., let's say to target women-headed private entities that can supply goods and services to the oil and gas sector. I also think, following on from what Victoria said, there's really low-hanging fruit ways which we can encourage more women to get involved. I mean, where I currently am at the PC, at the Petroleum Commission, we realized that there was quite a number of young professional women of childbearing age, that, you know, many of them had to take time off, go out, get pregnant, when they were pregnant, look after their children and come back. And we realized that it left some gaps in their career progression. So what we've done is a very simple thing. We have a nursery now. So women that have gone out, given birth, and have children that they would normally leave at home and be thinking about while they're at work, etc., etc., they can come to work. There's a nice creche, there's a nice place, serene environment, they can express their milk, they can do all of that thing and still work and be just as productive, if not more productive. These are really, really simple measures. Even with regards to training, a lot of the time when you're in the oil and gas sector, skills development, a lot of the time women can be overlooked. We make it a policy that whenever training programs are on and we do get available slots, that women are adequately represented. Again, it's deliberate, it's targeted, and it's based on diversity as well as merit. So I think what we lack a lot of is intentionality. Oh yeah, it'll just happen. Yeah, women will come up. But it doesn't work like that. You have to be aggressive. You have to be intentional. And especially with a sector that is already heavily male-dominated, it's not as if the men that are involved are going to willingly give up a piece of the pie. It has to be taken by force. So those of us that do have the privilege, I should say, of being in positions where we do make decisions in this area should give the gender diversity issue a real helping hand. And there's another thing, the last thing I'll say, that is personally I've tried to implement is a mentoring system. The few women that have been able to reach certain heights within the oil and gas sector, I think it is a responsibility for some of us to try and mentor or even coach the younger ones coming. I know that GoGig have a particular forum where we have women in oil and gas, and we're developing that to talk about some of the issues that we face. But within either the public institutions or the private sector, I think it's very important. With my time where I've been at the Petroleum Commission, just taking a few women on board, discussing their career development, their career path, helping them to make the right decisions and the right choices, no matter how tough they are, and bring them along. I think that one is also an area which those of us that are a little more senior can help the ones coming on.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Ms. Mekobed, do you think there is a political will on the part of government to ensure that women are participating and included in the development of oil and gas?
Volonté politique, c'est peut-être dans l'élaboration des lois. Mais quand on élabore un texte juridique pour dire qu'on veut tel pourcentage de personnel local, on ne spécifie pas tel nombre de femmes, tel nombre d'hommes. Et c'est ça qui pose problème. Et moi, je voudrais dire qu'en matière de pourcentage, que ça apparaisse clairement dans les documents pour dire que nous voulons au moins 100 femmes, 100 personnels. Et sur les 100, au moins 60 doivent être des femmes. Donc, encourager les candidatures féminines. En ce moment-là, je pense qu'on pourrait avoir assez de femmes dans ce secteur. Mais toujours est-il que c'est des législations qui sont assez vagues. On dit on veut tel nombre de personnes, et comme l'a dit Victoria, généralement, les femmes postulent. Mais quand elles postulent, bon, on met de côté les candidatures féminines. Et généralement, on fait le lien entre la maternité, parce qu'on se dit, bon, mais si la femme est mise à ce niveau-là, si elle accouche, par exemple, elle va rester pendant 1 année, 2 ans à la maison et qui fera ce travail-là, soit son mari est malade, elle est à la maison, l'enfant est malade, elle est à la maison, alors que dans ce domaine, on a besoin d'une évolution, on a besoin de rendement. Ça aussi, c'est un frein à l'implication des femmes. Et à ce niveau-là, le gouvernement a un triple rôle à jouer. Déjà, introduire le pourcentage des femmes à être recrutées dans ce domaine et faire en sorte que ça soit appliqué. Donc, ça implique le suivi. Récemment, dans notre pays, nous avons la raffinerie de Djarmaya qui est à N'Djamena. Et dans le document de contrat qui a été élaboré, il est question de recruter 60 personnes au niveau local et 40 chinois. Jusqu'à ce niveau-là, le personnel local n'a pas atteint le pourcentage qui a été indiqué dans le document. Et donc, le directeur général qui est chinois est allé en vacances et le directeur adjoint qui est tchadien a recruté le personnel tchadien pour dire voilà ce qui est écrit dans le document et qu'on doit respecter. Mais quand le chinois est arrivé, il dit mais pourquoi à mon absence d'abord on recrute, alors que c'est clairement indiqué dans le document qu'on doit recruter tel nombre de personnel local. Et ça a causé énormément de problèmes, si bien qu'on a fermé la raffinerie pendant quelques jours, on n'avait pas eu de pétrole ni de l'essence pour mettre dans nos véhicules au niveau de N'Djamena. Donc vous voyez un peu, le gouvernement met en place, les compagnies ne respectent pas, mais quand on veut faire suivre cette logique-là, ça pose problème. Et donc je crois qu'il faut que le gouvernement soit assez fort. Le domaine du pétrole, surtout que nous n'avons pas les moyens de l'exploration, de l'exploitation, c'est les compagnies étrangères qui viennent nous aider. Et quand ils viennent, ce n'est pas des enfants de cœur. Ils veulent automatiquement, rapidement rassembler leurs bénéfices. Mais ce n'est pas cela qui doit empêcher le gouvernement de faire ce suivi-là. Et ce suivi ne doit pas seulement être fait par le gouvernement. Je crois que nous, population, devons également faire le suivi. Dès lors qu'il y a déjà un texte qui est là, un texte qui est adopté, un texte qui doit être respecté, nous devons faire le suivi pour faire en sorte que les compagnies puissent respecter l'engagement qu'ils ont pris. Parce qu'en acceptant de signer son contrat, c'est un engagement qu'ils ont pris pour dire nous sommes d'accord pour ce qui est écrit dans le document et voilà comment nous devons y procéder. Quelle est la périodicité ou bien quel est le temps que nous nous donnons pour pouvoir atteindre le montant ou bien le taux que nous sommes fixés. Et donc, moi j'ai dit, le gouvernement doit mettre une législation en place, mais doit également suivre, être un gouvernement responsable. Généralement, ce matin, j'ai aimé le monsieur qui a parlé des gouvernants, il a oublié de parler du Tchad, hein, pour dire qu'au Gabon, par exemple, on ne sait pas où est le président, quelque part, le président ont révisé la constitution, mais il a oublié de parler du Tchad. Le Tchad, le président est là depuis 28 ans. Il a révisé 2 fois la Constitution pour pouvoir rester au gouvernement. Donc, ces genres de gouvernement également, ils sont là à cause des revenus ou bien à cause des ressources pétrolières. Parce qu'il y a assez de pétrole, il y a assez de richesses. Et donc, si c'est dit, mais si j'organise des élections et que je pars, je risque de perdre. Donc, il faudrait que nous ayons des gouvernements responsables et des gouvernements qui puissent respecter également leur engagement pour faire en sorte que ce qui est pris comme document, ce qui est pris comme législation puisse être respecté. Et quand un nouveau gouvernement arrive, il faudrait également qu'on dit l'administration ait une continuité. Qu'on ne dise pas que celui-là, il a fait cette loi-là pour lui et que moi, si j'arrive, je dois réviser cette loi ou bien abolir cette loi pour faire en sorte que ce que moi je mets en place là puisse être à ma convenance. Et là aussi, ça va poser un problème. Et si, en ce niveau-là, on dit il y a un pourcentage où on veut impliquer les femmes et que celui qui arrive n'est pas un gouvernement qui est enclin à impliquer les femmes dans les instances de décision, je pense que ça va encore être un problème. Moi, pour terminer, je prendrai un exemple. Nous avons commencé à exploiter le pétrole en 2000 au Tchad. Il y a une loi qui a créé le collège de contrôle et de surveillance des revenus pétroliers. Il est question de mettre en place cet organe-là. Donc, femmes, hommes, société civile, gouvernement, qui devaient composer le collège. Et il fallait passer par des élections. J'ai posé ma candidature pour être élu à ce poste-là. Mais les hommes se sont ligués pour dire, mais toi tu es femme, qu'est-ce que tu connais dans ce domaine-là pour vouloir être dans ce collège? Laisse-nous, nous connaissons mieux le milieu et c'est nous qui devons être là. J'ai dit, ok, puisque vous connaissez déjà le milieu, ça ne vaut plus la peine d'être là. Moi qui ne connais pas, je voudrais être là aussi pour mieux comprendre ce qui se passe dans ce domaine-là. Et quand j'ai dit ça, les gens ont dit, mais c'est vrai qu'elle a raison. Et dans le vote, maintenant, j'ai été élu. Et ça n'a pas été admis par les autres hommes qui étaient là pour dire, mais oui, mais elle ne connaît rien, pourquoi vous le mettez dans le collège de contrôle? Qu'est-ce qu'elle peut faire? Je suis resté au collège, J'ai eu la chance également de diriger ce collège-là pendant un temps. Et comme toujours, une femme ne doit pas diriger une instance pareille. Lors des élections, les hommes encore se sont ligués pour que ce soit un homme qui vienne prendre la présidence et moi je sois la vice-présidente. Donc vous voyez un peu comment nous les femmes, nous ne sommes pas souvent admis. On est admis, on est chéris quand les hommes ont besoin de quelque chose de nous. Mais quand c'est quelque chose qui porte sur les intérêts, je crois que chacun doit jouer sa partition pour voir quel est mon intérêt et comment nous devons faire. Parce que ce n'est pas les hommes qui viennent nous dire, viens rester dans ce côté-là. Quand c'est leur occasion, viens me préparer à manger, viens chérie faire cela, nous on est aimés. Mais dans ce domaine-là, qui est un domaine trop technique, technicité, là, les hommes qui viennent dans ce domaine-là, ils ne sont pas nés avec la technique, ils apprennent. Et moi j'ai dit, il faudrait que les femmes puissent arriver dans ce domaine-là et apprendre comme les hommes. Et donc le gouvernement doit mettre en place un budget qui est sensible au genre, faire une planification de formation selon les compétences de chacun et que les femmes puissent être là également pour que leur point de vue soit pris en compte dans les décisions et dans la planification pour pouvoir faire un développement durable.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mikombe. You have raised a very important observation on issues of not having only good policies and laws which are manicured and decorated, but also the enforcement of these laws is very important, and who is going to monitor. And you raise a point of citizen engagement in terms of monitoring and these policies and laws. Now I'd like to invite the audience, for those who have questions. Okay, I'll take 1, 2, and the late there 3. Welcome.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for giving me the chance to speak. In fact, on the issue of women inclusiveness in oil and gas, it is very, very imperative because I feel that the government should sit up by deliberately coming up with policy that will favor the women in terms of capacity building, but at the same time not neglecting the men. Okay, there's something that I note that the ant that bites you is in your pocket. There's a proverb like that. Because women, sincerely speaking, they just very much like themselves. Okay. Yeah, because, yeah, I'm just saying that because I remember in politics, let me give you an example in Nigeria. About a few years ago, a woman came up to be elected president. During the primaries, only 1 vote she got. And that was her own vote. You remember Jibril? Yeah, only her vote. So what are those women in authority? They should try to mentor the young ones and encourage them. You should encourage them. Because, and the young ones, or the women in general, should not allow to be for the cake to be baked for them. They should bake the cake. They should try as much as possible to uplift themselves. Okay, that's what I'm just saying that they should try as much as possible to encourage themselves. Like we are saying that you should not just wait for things to be done for you. I know education is very, very costly in most countries. The government should come in, and at the same time, you must have to encourage yourself. Okay, I must have to, the older ones should mentor the younger ones and show them the way.
Okay, thank you.
Inclusiveness is very, very important. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Another, well, the panelists are going to respond to that one. I saw a hand here. I'm coming to you. Okay.
Thank you. My name is Kwame Jantwa. I have been in this local content thing for years. It started here in Ghana. I've done a lot of countries in Africa. So I really understand this local content thing.
Can you please go straight to the
Yes,
question,
I'm going
because
straight.
our time is not enough.
I'm going straight to the question. You see, for women to be part and parcel of the oil industry depends on the women themselves. Typical example is Lady Jemima sitting there herself. Started from nowhere, came in and worked her way up, and she's where she is today. But most importantly, we need to be able to change the mindset of the man. As difficult and as challenging as that sounds, it has to be done. Number two, we need to be able to change the culture that we have in Africa of how we see women. If I am to take a poll in this room today, how many women here came because of their companies, and how many women here came because of themselves? 1, 2,
Thank
3.
you. Are you facilitating, or are you
I'm not
asking the question?
facilitating.
Sorry.
I'm trying to make a point. I'm trying to make a point. I'm trying to make a point.
Please.
And the point I'm trying to make is that there are two sides to this industry. There is the operational side, where people coming from companies are present. And there is the business side, where we expect to create business people out of the industry.
Thank you. There's a hand from a lady, please. You are welcome. Yes, yes.
One of the inputs needed for the oil industry is salt. And Ghana is a country which produces salt. And if you look at the character of those who are actually in the business of producing salt, you realize that it's largely small scale, yes, but heavily populated by women. And we've been working with them around just supporting their activities. And one of the questions I asked one of these women producers is, are you able to get financing to both build up the scale of your business and improve the quality of your salt? And she looked at me in astonishment and asked, financing from where? I mean, and when you look at government policy with regards to salt, you realize that government is promoting large-scale salt, which has very little space for women, the small-scale women providers. And this is a clear example of something that's needed. We're importing salt to the oil sector from countries outside Africa. We have salt. We produce salt. What is being done to support women's ability to improve their scale? I mean, we hear stories about the fact that women aren't able to run businesses, and there are different aspects of the challenges that women face. But what does government policy say in terms of how do we support women who are already in business, trying to improve their businesses and build up that scale? Where are the women who are offering, there was a question about industry and the petroleum sector. Where is the support for those kind of spaces? Now, I think that the discussion about how women are their own enemies should not be done here. It's a long-standing discussion, and we can go in many, many spaces. But the fact is, has policy actually looked at the fact that women can be participants, and therefore we have to help them become there? I mean, you can say that men are not being helped, but I bear to disagree. When men are going for a loan, they will not be asked to show their spouses or to show that they can, pay off their loan because their spouse has collateral. Women may be asked to show where is your marriage certificate before you can get a loan. There are some long-standing barriers to women gaining many of these inputs and ability to grow. And this is the kind of thing that we need to look at. Thank you.
Thank you so much. As a way to respond to the second question, I'm giving priority for women. So women, can you please raise your hand? Thank you. Yeah, this is priority for women, and then I'll come to men. Karibu from Kenya. Yes.
Thank you. I think for me it's two things. The one thing is the narrative, just building from what Mrs. Makombe was talking about, the systemic bias, and even from the topic itself, we're talking about empowerment. It should be a gender justice thing, because if you look at the sector, the cost is mainly borne by the women, and the narrative around women empowerment is currently being used to push away the costs that women bear within the extractive sector through this tokenism around women empowerment. And I think we need to address that systemic bias that is currently being used. And if you look everywhere, we're talking about women empowerment, women empowerment. And until we're able to push it to the gender justice angle so that we can measure what is the empowerment versus what is the costs. Because I really fear that the cost aspect is really pushed down based on this tokenistic empowerment.
Okay, thank you. I'll come to you, but may I allow you to respond to the question. Doctor, do you really agree that women, we don't like ourselves?
Not at all. And to me, that whole perception is very interesting. If two men get into an argument, it's just two people arguing. If two women get into an argument, then women just don't like themselves. It is a mindset issue. And I think it's not one that I prescribe to, and it's not one I think I'm going to encourage you to discuss. One of the interesting things that the gentleman, his contribution, he said, government should deliberately come up with a policy to help the women while not neglecting the men. I mean, 80% of the workforce are already men. So clearly, men will not be neglected. What we're asking for is an equal and fair share of the cake. We're not asking for neglect or anybody to be marginalized. So I think even in thinking about women being more adequately represented, it's not a men against women thing. It's an issue of what is right, what is just, and what is fair. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Victoria, do you have something to add? And then Mekombe.
Okay. I agree with the speaker that said there is a mindset problem that exists undergirding this problem. I remember this year, I think April this year, Nigeria was conducting a public hearing on the petroleum industry bill, and I was one of those that submitted a memo, and I was invited to address the federal parliament. And at the federal parliament, the first issue I put on the table was inclusive or equal representation of women in the energy sector. And as soon as I said it, all the senators started laughing. As if I said something that was so out of place. And I started giving them some of the statistics from McKinsey, from PricewaterhouseCoopers, from Pew Research Center, talking about some of the gains, higher returns of investment, better stock growth, higher operating results that are connected to, associated with gender equality and gender diversity in petroleum establishments. And it sounded so odd. So there is really that mindset problem among people, even among women themselves, among men, among women, where they think that the petroleum conversation or energy sector is not for women. That needs to change. And how do we change that? Different institutions have different roles to play. Starting with the family. When you have a male child and a female child, then you buy the girl dolls, then you buy the boy trucks, helicopters to play with. You're already sending a signal to the children that you can do the softer, harmless, simple things that are usually unpaid for. Then you can work hard, struggle how to work with mechanized equipment. And they grow with that socialization. And that is what we see also playing out in the oil and gas sector. Then beyond the family, then we also have the look at the corporate sector. What kind of things do they complement? In Nigeria, they have what we call, I'm sorry, I'm not saying that the program is bad, but I'm just trying to tell you how reward systems is not also encouraging participation of women. There's a program they call Project Fame. Ghana participates. So you just sing for a number of days and you get ₦1 million and an SUV. At the same time, there was a woman in University of Calabar that got first class in mathematics. And she got 10,000 naira, $25, after 4 years. So what kind of reward systems do you give to women who actually take part? Then when you come to the private sector, do women also have a chance to climb the corporate ladder up to the highest level? Are we factoring in when we make decisions? She will go on maternity leave next year. She will not be around next year. No problem, let's give it to them. So some of these things are also playing a part. But that lady asked a very important question about women that are already involved, playing some roles. How do you scale up? If you ask me to advise the government, maybe I would be suggesting maybe flexible tariff or licensing conditions for women energy entrepreneurs. It's something that can work. The licensing conditions are very onerous, and of course we understand why, because of the high standards, high technology that is required. But where women need to play very important roles, like what you talked about, SALT, governments can intervene. That's where legislation can help to lessen some of those tariffs, some of those required to ensure that women can participate in the sector.
Thank you. Ms. Mekombe, maybe you have something to add on issues of mindset versus the culture that hinder women to access resources?
Ok. Je voudrais aussi répondre un peu à la sœur tout à l'heure qui a dit qu'il faille revenir au sujet qui ne paie pas la participation mais l'autonomisation. Mais je pense que c'est des choses qui sont interliées. Une femme autonome, c'est une femme qui a la capacité de participer aux prises de décision. Et l'autonomisation des femmes à ce niveau-là, dans ce secteur, ne vient pas seulement du fait qu'elles soient formées, mais en matière d'achat, par exemple. Il faudrait que les femmes également aient cette possibilité-là d'y participer. Nous, quand nous avons commencé l'exploitation du pétrole, on a demandé qu'au niveau de la zone, on produise beaucoup d'œufs pour pouvoir faciliter au niveau de ceux qui vivent sur le site. Il y a des femmes qui font du maraîchage, il y a des femmes qui sont dans l'élevage de la volaille, mais elles n'ont pas pu s'organiser pour pouvoir mettre à disposition ce qui est demandé. Donc, on est obligé d'aller acheter même de la salade au Cameroun, les œufs, c'est au Cameroun qu'on va les chercher, alors qu'à ce niveau-là, on pouvait déjà organiser ces femmes-là, mettre à leur disposition même des crédits à taux préférentiel pour leur permettre de s'organiser, de se mettre en groupement. Ça permettrait également d'augmenter la productivité en matière des œufs ou bien en matière de maraîchage là, pour pouvoir bénéficier de ce marché-là ou bien des achats qui étaient faits. Mais ça n'a pas été le cas parce que les femmes n'ont pas cette possibilité-là. C'est comme la sœur là-bas l'a aussi dit. Les femmes qui sont dans le sel, qui font la production du sel, qu'est-ce que le gouvernement fait pour ces femmes-là? Elles se débrouillent comme elles peuvent. Mais c'est au niveau du gouvernement également, même si on dit que le gouvernement ne doit pas tout faire, pour que les femmes puissent être impliquées, pour que les femmes puissent s'autonomiser, pour que les femmes puissent participer au développement, il faut bien qu'il y ait un soutien quelque part. Et le soutien ne peut venir que du gouvernement. Il faut mettre en place également des mécanismes qui puissent permettre aux femmes d'accéder facilement, qu'on ne vienne pas demander à la femme l'acte de mariage, l'acte de ceci, pour pouvoir lui octroyer un crédit et mettre en place une caution. La majorité des femmes n'ont pas de terre, la majorité des femmes n'ont pas un habitat. Donc, quelle est la richesse que la femme possède pour pouvoir mettre en caution, pour pouvoir avoir un crédit bancaire? Et à ce niveau-là, le gouvernement doit également faire quelque chose. Moi, je dis, la banque ne peut pas prêter sans taux d'intérêt. Mais au moins que ce soit un taux d'intérêt qui soit préférentiel, qui permette aux femmes de rembourser ces prêts-là. Ça permettrait également aux femmes de s'autonomiser, ça permettrait aux femmes de grandir en capacité dans la production et dans l'implication dans le développement. Pour ce qui est de la participation des femmes, ça c'est un constat qui est réel. Mais c'est à nous aussi de faire cet effort-là. Pas seulement d'être des mentors, mais par nos comportements, par notre manière de faire, entraîner également celles qui viennent après nous. Les jeunes filles, les femmes qui sont mises à côté. Comment faire pour que les femmes puissent s'entraider, puissent se soutenir. Mais là aussi, ce n'est pas seulement un problème qui est au niveau des femmes. Ces femmes-là qui font de sorte que, moi j'ai dit, quand elles sont assises sur une chaise, elles font des coudes pour écarter celles qui veulent s'approcher de ces chaises-là. Mais dans ce cas-là, comment voulez-vous que nous puissions être à même de participer? Il faudrait que quand une femme est là, qu'elle puisse aider les autres femmes également à parvenir là où elle est. Mais dans la plupart des cas, on pense que si la femme accède ou bien si la femme se rapproche de là où je suis, peut-être qu'elle risque de m'évincer. Et cette mentalité, il faudrait que nous, les femmes, nous puissions également changer de mentalité pour dire que si je suis là, je dois faire en sorte que mes sœurs, mes filles puissent arriver pour prendre la relève. On n'est pas né pour vivre là, on n'est pas né pour mourir là. Si nous faisons de cette manière-là, nous sommes comme certains chefs d'État qui arrivés déjà au pouvoir ne veulent pas partir parce qu'ils veulent mourir au pouvoir. Donc, ils font des coudes pour écarter les opposants, écarter la société civile, écarter tout ce qui peut empêcher que leur chaise ne soit bousculée. Donc nous ne devons pas faire de cette manière-là et aider également les autres femmes. Et moi je dis, ce n'est pas parce que nous parlons des femmes que nous mettons les hommes en dehors de la chaîne. Les hommes également doivent nous soutenir, mais nous soutenir d'une manière objective. Mais pas nous soutenir parce que cette femme-là, elle est de ma lignée, c'est pas cette femme-là, elle est ma copine, c'est pas parce que cette femme-là, elle est de mon ethnie ou bien de mon parti politique. Mais soutenir parce que c'est une femme qui est compétente, c'est une femme qui peut, c'est une femme qui doit. En ce moment-là, les hommes également peuvent être de nos côtés pour nous aider à avancer. Mais quand on regarde soit la beauté de la femme, soit l'origine de la femme, l'origine ethnique, l'origine religieuse, ça ne peut pas nous aider. Et dans ce cas-là, nous ne voulons pas de ces hommes-là. Ces hommes-là qui viennent seulement pour regarder nos beaux yeux, nous ne voulons pas. Mais nous voulons des hommes qui ne soient pas seulement féministes, mais des hommes qui savent que la femme peut et qui sont là pour soutenir afin que la femme puisse également parvenir.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to take another opportunity. This side,
thank you, Madam Chairperson.
The second one, and here.
Oh, as long as you second the second one, then I'll speak. I regret to say that I do not agree with some of the statistics that have been presented here, specifically in relation to women not liking sciences and going towards other subjects. I would say that in the Sudan, the ratio of women to men in universities are about 52 to 48 at current and increasing. And the second thing is that plenty of them are studying sciences rather than social subjects. The second statistics is that we should be aware that this percentage of women to women statistically around the world is increasing. In fact, one of the prophecies is that before doomsday, women will be 50, men will be 1 to 50. So before that comes, I think we have to relinquish looking under our feet, both women and men, and here I mean women and men. Because once we become a greater portion of the society, then the country cannot afford to leave such a large sector out of the workforce. That is number one. And number two, that we have to relinquish educating ourselves. Since we were children, we were asked, what do you want to become? I want to be a pilot, I want to be an engineer, I want to be a doctor, and women have similar things that they are asked. Now, this has to stop. The technology is moving so fast that probably some things will be completely abolished. And then you'll have to look at ways and means whereby you can induct women first before men on moving towards the future rather than looking at our feet. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, our time is finished, but I would like to emphasize on one point that for 2 days we've been discussing, reflecting on how issues of power is difficult for all of us, even to access the resources. But when it comes to issues of women, as you can see, people they are saying them against us. And this is not taking us anywhere. It's not taking us anywhere. We should know that, as my father said, the population-wise, women are much more than men. If you talk even about death rate, it's the same. And always we know numbers count. So we really have to make sure that we engage women, we include women and other vulnerable people if we really want to see the value added for our resources. Thank you so much.
Our gorgeous women, and we must do a better one. This is a very final session. You don't want to dare me to say when the men were speaking, we're giving them a bigger round of applause, do you? So please make sure you give them a bigger round of applause. I'm grateful that they all joined us for that very challenging, thought-provoking conversation. Thank you very much, Victoria. Thank you, Jemima, Makombe, and of course, Anna, for great facilitation. In the next 18 minutes, and I want to really do this on the dot, so we are out of here at 2 exactly as we've originally intended to for lunch. In the next 18 minutes, we are going to go through our communique, discuss it a bit, get input from you, and then we'll close. So I would invite Pauline Anaman from the Africa Center for Energy Policy. She's going to go through the communique, and in 5 minutes we'll invite inputs from the audience, and then we'll finalize, and you'll get final copies in your mail. And after that, I will invite the Executive Director of the Africa Center for Energy Policy to close us. Ladies and gentlemen, Pauline Anaman.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. All too soon, we have brought the summit to an end, and I must say that I really enjoyed the discussions. I want to thank you so much for your participation and the meaningful contribution you gave. So at the end of yesterday's session and today's sessions, we have put together the key takeaways from the summit. So I'll read them out. So at the beginning of the 4th Africa Oil Governance Summit in Accra on 13th and 14th November 2018, it was concluded that local content is a great tool for developing the domestic economies and promoting local workforce. The reality, however, depends on the extent of a country's preparation, as well as effective implementation, monitoring, and evaluation at the national, sub-regional, and regional levels. The challenges of local content achievements were widely discussed. These are summarized as low capacity levels of local human resources and businesses, and the representation of women and persons with disability in assessing local content opportunities. Ownership syndrome, that is the culture of businesses where businesses want to go solo instead of building partnerships to create economies of scale. Limited access to finance, difficulty in integrating the oil and gas industry through local content into the rest of Africa's productive economies, overambitious targets of local content requirements, and poor coordination among countries to achieve industrialization and regional integration agenda. Now, local content is a shared responsibility and requires a partnership approach to achieve the shared benefits for all. So to address the issues identified, there are specific roles governments, regulatory bodies, business communities, and civil society organizations can play to achieve the localization agenda. So I'll speak to the role of government. Now, we have agreed that central governments must establish a balance between local content targets and the industry's survival through creative government interventions. And some of these interventions are proactive and continuous investment in human resource development, including building the competencies of women and persons with disability in STEM education, provision of key infrastructure to drive the localization agenda, consciously restraining from interference with powers and decisions of regulatory bodies, Governments must spend time and money to train the supervisors of the local content requirements to ensure compliance. Coordinating, harmonizing, and aligning local content efforts and policies across sectors, including the oil and gas sector, to ensure that these are not counterproductive, so the policies are not counterproductive to each other. Governments must also build long-term industrialization strategies that outlive political cycles. Governments must also understand their comparative advantage, and governments must also harmonize local content policies at the sub-regional and regional levels to achieve shared benefits. Governments must also commit to domesticating sub-regional and regional level commitments on local content. And the last is that governments, it takes strong leadership to audit technological demands of IOCs, that's international oil companies, to ensure that locals are not shortchanged. So this requires that African governments invest in and train locals in technologies that meet international standards to effectively compete. Now, transparency in terms of publishing of contracts is key to expanding local content opportunities. And lastly, African governments and companies must make local content relevant for the rest of their economies and ensure that livelihoods destroyed by oil and gas operations are sustainably replaced through local content policies. Now let's look at the role of regulatory bodies. Regulatory bodies must be effective in monitoring local content requirements. This requires that they are effective, competent, and independent to properly evaluate local content implementation. Regulatory bodies must coordinate effectively with other state institutions to jointly undertake timely cost audits. Now, the approach to local content by regulatory bodies must be non-partisan to ensure continuity of implementation. We also have roles by business community. Now, with the business community, international oil companies have some roles to play. And from the discussion, we have seen that local content is not a barrier to investment from the perspective of oil and gas companies. It is seen as social license to operate because it neutralizes the possibility, it neutralizes possible adverse effects of Hello, yeah, it's working. Okay. So, as I was saying, international oil and gas companies see local content as a social license to operate because it neutralizes possible adverse impacts of oil and gas operations on host countries, particularly on domestic traditional livelihoods. International oil and gas companies must therefore be deliberate about local content by Hello. Okay. So IOCs should also be more transparent in their contracting processes to enable local companies to adequately prepare and take up the opportunities they present to them. Now, for local businesses, this is what they have to do. Local companies operating in the sector must pool resources through partnerships and joint ventures to capture greater value along the value chain. Local companies must be proactive in seeking information to take advantage of existing opportunities. And then local companies must consciously invest in the development of their competencies to meet international standards and certifications. Because from the discussions, we have seen that it is an important pathway to taking up opportunities in the sector. Now, the role of civil society. We have seen that local content requires serious monitoring, and so civil society can support the local content agenda by conducting effective monitoring and evaluation of the policies. And there are specific areas that civil societies can focus on. These include cost evaluation in subcontracting to ensure that cost inflation by companies is detected and stalled. And then contract award processes must also be monitored to ensure that the contracts are not awarded to businesses associated with politically exposed persons. Civil society organizations can also manage the difficult governance and political leadership issues surrounding local content policies. And finally, they can bring the understanding of local content close to the citizenry through effective engagement. For example, breaking down the technicalities of the sector to the ordinary citizen. And this in turn would enable citizens to hold governments and companies accountable. But civil society organizations cannot do this without support. One of the key supports they need is available data. Companies must be willing to provide data to civil society organizations. The same goes to government institutions. Civil society also needs the required funding. They need to be sustainably funded to do this kind of work. Now, when it comes to participation of women, we have had discussions about this. We've also heard, I've read how governments and companies can help women and persons with disability. But the other issue that we found was the funding issue, that women rarely have access to adequate financing. But we believe that if local content really prioritizes the interest of women, then financial institutions must also do same. They have to have confidence in the ideas women have and be willing to support women even along the supply chain. And women must also be bold enough to take up the opportunities that are given to them. They must be daring. So in conclusion, all we are saying is that for local content to be, for the objectives of local content to be achieved in Africa, we must build capacities of humans and businesses. We must be mindful about the abilities of women and persons with disability by creating local content opportunities for them. We must also limit political interferences in local content implementation. And we have to build strong regulatory bodies that are also independent. We have to have a flexibly stable long-term industrialization plan that goes beyond the enclave of the oil and gas industry. Each state must understand its comparative advantage in the oil and gas industry and harmonize these trends to ensure that there's shared benefits. Petroleum cost auditing must be an issue that states must take seriously. And then we have to be innovative about local content financing. Thank you very much.
In the next 3 minutes, if there's something we want to add to it, Pauline, just a second. Don't go yet. Something you want to add to it, you want to just raise your hands and suggest before we finalize and send you a mail. So if there's something that you feel strongly is missing from what you just heard, okay. There's a microphone on your table, very briefly.
Thanks for the update, the summary. I think that's been perfect. And you mentioned we needed a comprehensive industrial policy, which is true. But to complement the industrial policy, our goods need to go to market. So we also need to start strategizing around our trade policy. So yeah, that was my addition. Thank you.
Thank you. Pauline got that down. I see one more hand there. Yes, sir. Please use your microphone. And it has to be brief, please.
Very brief. Yeah, I think what we need to also look at has been the issue of implementation. We realize that most of the policies are there, but it's left with implementation. So we're looking at the policymakers and policy implementers to ensure the absolute implementation of whatever policy that we have put in place or whatever decision that we have made over here.
Thank you. Implementation. Is that all? Yes, please. Use your microphone on the table. Please grab it.
Thank you. I'll be quick. I don't know whether it was captured or I just didn't hear it. I want to mention that the issue of local content is like a double-edged sword. We really have to be careful, especially the
what do you want us to include? That was missing.
That is what I have to build the pretext before you.
No, I just state it. Okay. I don't have time. Just state it.
Okay. So what I want to state is that we have to make sure that we strike the balance. We shouldn't sacrifice for skilled labor to for local content just for the sake of local content. Then I'll end by saying that most of the industry disasters that we have, you are witness to 2010, what happened in BP. People invested a lot in this infrastructure. So they cannot afford to bring people who are not skilled enough. So we have to strike that balance.
Okay.
To make sure that whoever, you have to make sure that you strike the balance between the skilled labor and just meeting your local content initiatives.
Okay, thank you. You have 3. I think that will be it. I'll take you. That's it. I'm sorry. I'll just take this one. Yes? I'm sorry. I'll just take this one and then we end. We have to end because of time. You have to forgive me. Yes. They will send, I'm sure, I'm pretty sure after we are done, they're also working on it. So the team is right behind there. I'll show you where they are. If you don't do it in the plenary, you can see them and they would incorporate it. I'm sure that is also workable. That's also workable. And Pauline is here, so you can see Pauline. And then, but I just want to hear one last one from our friends from the PwC. Yes, please. Yes, please use the microphone. Is somebody going to interpret that for us? Yes.
Okay, talking about the opportunities for the people of disabilities. That when there are opportunities, they should be made public for all to see, so that the PWDs can also see opportunities made public, so that they can all apply together. That is what he's talking about.
Pauline, you got it? Okay. Okay, so Pauline says you can, if he's going to be brief, because you can. Yes, you can. Thank you very much.
The issue of harmonization of local content practices for regional and continental integration, we mentioned it. I think it's relevant.
Harmonization. Is there? Okay, is there? Okay, thank you very much, Pauline. Is there any more? That's it. Thank you very much. Oh, we still have more hands. Okay, I think the clap is a signal that we have to end it. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. So yes, I know you have a lot of views, but I'll encourage you, if you still feel strongly about it, see the team and see if you can cooperate it. But I want to quickly now invite the Executive Director of the Africa Center for Energy Policy to close us, and he'll have 2 minutes to deliver that, because I seriously want to end exactly on the dot at 2. And so ASAP will keep to that. A round of applause for Benjamin Boakye.
Thank you, Evans. The last time I had to close this session, I was tempted to say hallelujah. But I think praise the Lord will do for this one. It's been amazing 2 days of discussing local content. And I'm happy about the participation, the quality of the discussion. And I'm hoping that together, as business, as government, as civil society, as academia, everybody here, we would make that conscious effort to ensure that we continue the discussion and make sure that we can operationalize the outcome of this summit. I want to thank everyone who has been here. It's taken a lot of effort to stay through, and I think this year we've been able to keep the numbers right to the end, and that is quite impressive. I'm so grateful. I wish all of you who are traveling, travel mercies to be able to get to your destinations. I thank the sponsors of this meeting. Without them, we wouldn't have this summit happen. And I must say a big thank you to my staff, if you want to come here, so we can see you for the hard work you've put into this to make it a success. Please run so that we can close as Evans wishes. These are the young men and women who have worked tirelessly to make this event possible, and I'm so grateful. Okay, I think the applause says it. Thank you very much. And then God bless us all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, all lovely looking ladies and gentlemen of the Africa Center for Energy Policy. And I just simply want to repeat what Ben said there. Oxfam, NORAD, Ford Foundation, Natural Resource Governance Institute, University of Dundee, all have made this possible, and we are grateful for what you've done to make this possible. We're close now, and I want to say safe trip to everybody who traveled from across the continent. Enjoy the scenery and enjoy the food. Definitely. Thank you for coming, and forgive me if I had to make sure we end on time, but it has to be done. So, because that's what we wrote down. I thank you for your cooperation in the last 2 days. We see you again next year, possibly same time. Enjoy the trips back home.